Hello there. In our last video, we talked about the bookends of Bo Burnham's Inside. We talked about the beginning sequence and then also the ending sequence, but we left off at a bit of a cliffhanger at this shot right here, right before Bo was about to leave the room. We talked about it kind of, opening a crack by itself and him very hesitantly with, a lot of hesitation getting up and going to leave the room. But that's where we left off because we said we would do a separate video on the actual conclusion to the special, which is what we're going to talk about today. So, as Bo goes to leave the room, which we said directly mirrors, of course, when he enters the room, we go from this shot to this one where we see him kind of exiting the room, and again his face, his emotions at this point there's a lot of apprehension there. It's not excited and eager to leave like you might have thought it would have been earlier, or when you think about him being trapped in this room for a year and finally getting to leave. It feels different than how we expected it to. And the interesting thing about this little shot is that the camera stays resumed right here, even as he exits the room and stands and kind of looks past the camera out to whatever he sees when he walks outside. And this builds a little bit of tension. It's kind of like in a horror movie where you're really close up on somebody so you can't really see what's around them, like what's behind them. You're kind of waiting for something to jump out and scare you. It's kind of like that. It's a weird shot that we just kind of get him on the left side of the frame, and we don't really see his face or him in focus, and we kind of just don't know what we're looking at or what's about to happen. So it builds that tension a little bit. And then we skip to a shot of this, and we realize in that instant that this is not what we were expecting, right? We thought that we would be exiting into the daylight, that it was the daylight coming in the door, but it's not. It's actually a spotlight, as we can see now, which we should have known, I guess, because if you look at it in here, there's clearly not really any light coming in through the window, like there would be if it was truly like midday outside. Like we saw, even though the blinds were open a little bit, we saw the daylight streaming through at the beginning, and I think at the end of Make Happy as well. But now there's no light. It is just him outside in the nighttime in a spotlight. And as he was exiting, we heard a lot of noises like bird calls and maybe even like some people talking, or almost like neighborhood kind of sounds. But as soon as he exits fully and we get this shot, it changes to applause. And people are clapping for him. It's kind of that that applause that maybe he's been waiting for, that he hasn't been hearing the entire time he's been in the room. Again, except now there's a bit of an ominous or a sinister tone to it. I think the reference here, it reminds me of the Shakespeare quote, right, about all the world is a stage, right? And so if that's true, then that also means that the performance never ends. And even when you think that you're done and you're moving on, he finds himself still in the spotlight, still the center of attention, which he was seeking at the beginning, but now, again, maybe not so much of a good thing. And so he kind of just casually turns around and tries to go back inside. Maybe he doesn't like being in the bright light, or he doesn't like the cacophony of the noise of all the people clapping after being isolated for so long. Whatever the reason, he decides he wants to go back inside. And when he turns, he finds the door locked and begins kind of, knocking on the door, really trying to his best to yank it open. The sound in the background has moved from applause to laughing, and he becomes more and more desperate, banging on the door and trying to get back inside, and again, just really not liking the attention and the turn that events have taken. I think it has to do a little bit with what happened just at the end of Goodbye, where the voices came back and were singing the "Well, well, look who's inside again," went out to look for a reason to hide again. Come out with your hands up, we've got you surrounded. And it turns out that that was true, right? And now I think it's also like when he knew that when he started making this, that he was kind of returning, even though it wasn't to live comedy, he was sort of returning to comedy and to his old stage persona, and kind of returning to performing, even though it wasn't a traditional performance. And it's like now that it's kind of done and he's finished with it, it's like he's letting it out into the world, and once that happens, there's no going back. You can't take it back inside, right? Once it's out there, and you're opening yourself up to both the applause and the laughter, whether it's good or bad, whether it's well received or criticized. You kind of have no control over it at that point. So those are kind of the things that this scene makes me think of. And then we go from this shot, and I didn't time it perfectly, but there is a really perfect kind of match cut from this shot into this, where all of a sudden it changes from us watching the actual footage of him in the backyard to that footage being shown on the projector, and we realize we're back inside, and now we're watching the scene that we just watched, but on the projector back inside the room. And he continues to kind of try to get back inside as the laughter continues, and he kind of eventually just gives up and like sits down almost in like a fetal position, kind of defeated, and just again not wanting the attention and not knowing how to get away from it. And it's kind of it's sad, it's a sad vibe. And I think that again, kind of maybe being worried that putting all this out here, he knows that he's opening himself up maybe to going back into that dark place mentally that he was in before. And finally, once it kind of has zoomed out to this far, we then switch to watching and seeing that it's Bo who's watching himself on the projector. And I think this relates to several of the the themes that have been going kind of throughout the special, that of dissociation, right, depersonalization, where he's watching himself as a viewer rather than kind of living that experience in his body. It's just like he's watching it on a projector, which is something I think that he talked about, what happens sometimes during the panic attacks and things. And his face, again, is very not quite emotionless, but definitely not happy. He's not laughing with the crowd. He's he's not clapping. He is not, also not, though, super angry or crying. It doesn't seem like he's relating to or having empathy for his own self that is on the screen in this kind of desperate situation. He's just kind of watching it very stoically and emotionlessly. And this is kind of where we leave it, except right as the camera's about to kind of go black and we are about to go right into the credits, we do get a moment where he gives us a kind of half little smile here. And again, it's one of those, if you're not looking very close, if you look away for a minute, you'll miss it. But he very purposefully kind of goes into a little bit of a smile here. And at first, when I was trying to figure out, why did he do that, I sort of hoped that maybe it was a hint at, even though this whole experience was hard and difficult, that maybe, it was a sign that in the end he was happy with what he had made, and he was kind of satisfied with it. But, the smile doesn't really reach his eyes, right? It's not really a true, genuine smile as much as it is this little kind of smirk or thing. So as I was kind of trying to think, what might that mean, or why might he have done that? What is he trying to say with this last little section here? I was rewatching Make Happy. And towards the end, in that little part where he kind of gets down and talks to the audience right before it goes into the Kanye rant, he said some things that that really resonated, and I think that kind of really connect well to this scene. So I'm just gonna read it since again we don't have the video clip. He said, social media is just the market's answer to a generation that demanded to perform. And remember, he talks a lot about the internet and Inside and different types and styles of social media, different ways that we use to communicate with each other digitally. So that's obviously, yeah, a theme that continued from the end of Make Happy throughout Inside. So social media is just the market's answer to a generation that demanded to perform. Because in Make Happy, he was worried that people wouldn't relate to it if they weren't performers. And then he realized that thanks to social media, again, we're all performers. We all find ourselves in that spotlight sometimes, and not necessarily very comfortable with it. Again, not always a positive experience. He said, so the market said, here, perform everything to each other all the time for no reason. Does that sound familiar, right? A little bit of everything all the time. He said, it's prison, it's horrific. It is performer and audience melded together. What do we want more than to lie in bed at the end of the day and just watch our life as a satisfied audience member? And I think that's what he's doing in this clip. I think he is watching his own life as a satisfied audience member. And again, kind of he's become so removed from it that it's almost like he can't relate to or empathize with that person anymore. Just watching his life as a satisfied audience member. He said, I know very little about anything, but what I do know is that if you can live your life without an audience, you should do it. And obviously, again, that whole thing is a little overly dramatic, right? But I think Inside is kind of almost his little confession that he couldn't live life without an audience, that in the end there's always going to be that part of him that, even way back to like Art is Dead, right, that wants to be seen and wants to share his ideas with the world and wants there to be an audience for them. And yeah, even though I think it may be a while before he comes out with something like this again, or before we see some sort of like a longer form thing from him again, I don't doubt that we haven't seen the last of Bo, because I think at the end of the day, he's truly an artist and a writer and a creator, and I think eventually he's going to have something else that he wants to say, some other ideas that he wants to share with the world, and he's just not going to be able to stop himself from creating art in order to share those ideas. So I think it's just what he does. So yeah, that's the end of Inside. Not really an upper, but definitely an interesting ending. And I'm sure there are lots of other interpretations or other ideas that you guys have about it and what it means or why he decided to end it that way. And so yeah, I would love to hear what else you guys think about the ending of Inside. But otherwise, and of course we get a little more insight too from the outtakes and things like that as well. Yeah. But otherwise, if you do have any other suggestions or things that you would like me to react to, either other bits from Inside or other songs or things that he's done that I haven't done previously, let me know. But as far as our discussion of the bookends of Inside, we have officially reached the end. Again, let me know if there's other things that you guys think or want me to do. But otherwise, I hope that you guys have enjoyed this little breakdown. And as always, as Bo would say, thank you for watching.